Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing so-called carbon passports now. It's been interesting to watch, roughly going on a half decade now, watching all of these sort of technocratic attempts from international opinion makers, or whatever you want to call them, coming up with these ideas about how we need all these different kinds of passports and travel documentation that, quite honestly, we've never needed before and don't make any sense to me whatsoever. So let's just dig into it here. I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from CNN. So edition.cnn.com under the title, "It's Time to Limit How Often We Can Travel Abroad." Quote, "Carbon passports," unquote, may be the answer. First of all, I am so tired of this in the media where they just present a premise where it's just, it's time. It's time to limit how often we travel abroad. Who said? Who came up with that idea? Why? I'm tired of this just constant, well, this is a given. No, it's not a given, Nobody thinks it's time we limit how often we travel abroad. So under the headline, or under the sub-headline, what is a carbon passport? Quoting directly, "The idea of a carbon passport centers on each traveler being assigned a yearly carbon allowance that they cannot exceed. These allowances can then, quote-unquote, ration travel." Quoting further, "This concept may seem extreme, but the idea of personal carbon allowances is not new." Now, they go into, and then they go into further just gobbledygook about all of this. But I like, the methodology of the sort of delivering the narrative on this, where they say, this concept may seem extreme, but the idea of personal carbon allowances is not new. Well, there's a lot of old ideas that are terrible. Marxism is one of them. The tenets of National Socialism in 1930s Germany, those are old ideas. They make them good? I mean, come on. What does that mean? And then meanwhile, this whole notion that we need to be assigned a yearly carbon allowance? Why? No one's been able to explain to me the quote-unquote science behind all of this talk. Nobody's ever been able to explain to me why exhaling a trace gas in the form of carbon dioxide is somehow in and of itself detrimental to life on Earth as we know it. In fact, it seems to be the antithesis of that, because plants breathe what we exhale, and they exhale what we breathe. So it seems to be, not to get too Disney on you here, in The Lion King, it's kind of the circle of life, it was my understanding. Meanwhile, aren't all humans made of carbon? And all life on the planet derived from carbon? So to have a carbon allowance, what does that mean? We're supposed to be bagged and tagged like some kind of living serfs or something? All of this is just nonsensical. And then when you read this stuff, it's like something truly. I remember reading, there's a book that's on this back shelf called Stasiland. I've also read a number of books over the years about the former Soviet Union, and I actually got to go to Russia in '99 and talk to people who had actually lived through it, and that you could, see the sort of vestiges of it and everything. This is the kind of nonsense that leads to those kind of systems. This isn't helpful to anyone. And I'm sure there's some, for lack of a better term, grift out there where somebody's going to be making money off this. I'm here to tell you, coming off the COVID situation, there's money in totalitarian tyranny. When people have to pay to do every little thing in their life, there's a lot of money to be made. But does that mean that's a good system? No, by no stretch of the imagination does it mean it's a good system. Look, at the end of the day, and this is fully enshrined in not only, the American founding documents where there's a right to travel enshrined therein, but also under the UN. The UN Charter of Human Rights notes a right to travel. It doesn't say a right to travel unless you're a carbon-based life form, or whatever premise they're using to go ahead and say that this new nonsense has to be imposed upon all of us hoi polloi out here in the world, because God knows we have to have our travel ration because we're carbon life forms or whatever. Again, at the end of the day, I don't understand the premises of these arguments, and the end result is a conclusion that basically leads to more totalitarianism. So at the end of the day, I can't see how in any way it's a good idea to have any kind of carbon passport.